Hey guys, KiddoFlex here, back with another review. Today I'll be talking about the vampire horror film Sinners. And if I'm being completely honest and upfront, I went into the theater prepared to be critical because this is a film made by Ryan Coogler, who has made some of what I see as the most overrated films of all time, specifically the Black Panther movies. The stories in both of them are dumb and not well thought out, and the only reason people talk about them at all is because they have black in the title. To be clear, Black Panther as a superhero is great, but the movies the character has been given are not. And apparently that's enough for some people to call you a racist. Yet at the same time, somehow says absolutely nothing about the moral character of those wanting to side with the villain, whose entire goal was to literally kill all white people, including their children. Funny how that reasoning works. So with all of that in mind, I shouldn't be a fan of Sinners, but to my surprise, it actually wasn't bad. And I would actually say it does a better job of being a Black Power fantasy than Black Panther. Power fantasies tend to get a bad rap when done poorly, but they can work if done correctly. Look at superheroes, for instance. Those are the most basic kinds of power fantasies. But power fantasies can fail for a number of reasons. You can give the self-insert insane amounts of plot armor that completely ruin the stakes in the story, not give them an actual character arc where they actually earn their power, or just make them a dick where they are presented as being in the right even when they do something completely stupid. But what people tend to dislike about black power fantasies in particular is how preachy and sanctimonious they come across. A film that comes to mind is the American Society of Magical Negative! A secret society of all black wizards could make for an interesting story, especially when the protagonist is biracial. But the movie makes people want to immediately turn it off by having most of its commentary be all about how white people are bad, have always been bad, and will continue to be bad until they sit down and be quiet. It's a very childish way of addressing race relations, as it's just race baiting. And you can't even say that I can't have an opinion on this because I'm a male monkey, because large chunks of this movie are dedicated to lecturing male monkeys such as myself. Sinners, though, doesn't fall into making these mistakes, even though it's more so geared towards black audiences, which I'm honestly fine with. You can make a story following whoever you want and make it for whatever audience you want, but the only thing I ask is for the story to at least be good. And on that front, the film definitely delivers. So let's talk about it. The film takes place in 1930s America and follows two black twin veterans turned mobsters named Smoke and Stack, who seek to start a new life in their hometown of Mississippi by opening a juke joint for the local black community. And what immediately hooked me was how the film properly sets up the process for how they build, hire, and attract people, which works as a great way of introducing the cast. Most notably, we have the aspiring blues musician cousin to the twins Sammy, Stack's scorned ex-lover he walked out on Mary, Smoke's estranged wife Annie, who is deeply involved in the occult after the death of their child, and a number of other characters we get acquainted with who are all drawn to the juke joint as a fresh beginning to accomplish their respective dreams. However, there's one more character drawn to the juke joint whose dream brings him at odds with the other attendees named Remick, and he's a vampire who wants to turn all the patrons into vampires so they can feast on humanity. The film then becomes a struggle for the patrons to survive the night against the vampires while being wary of their recently turned friends and family attempting to lure them out the magically protected juke joint that prevents them from coming inside unless invited in. Again, what gives the struggle the living patrons go through so much emotional weight is how for the first half, the film actually allowed us to spend time with the characters to provide them depth as real human characters instead of simply being an assortment of run-of-the-mill archetypes you typically see in horror movies. You know firsthand that these are good people, and may even want to see them want to have a happy ending, which makes it tempting to let your guard down around them because you weren't expecting them to turn out so ferociously and turn on the people they're close to. It keeps you on the edge of your seat because you're so invested, which makes it feel like a punch to the gut when barely anyone survives in the end. Before I get into spoilers, another aspect I really appreciated was the acting chops from all of the actors. Everyone involved gave a very detailed and convincing performance which accurately captured the time frame being presented. And the standout star would definitely be Michael B. Jordan. I don't know what it is about this year, but this is the third film I've seen so far that has the main lead playing dual roles. The other two being Robert Pattinson in Mickey 17 and Robert De Niro in Alto Knights. But Michael B. Jordan probably did his best version of it. Even though they're twins, their characters are so distinct from each other you automatically know which twin you're seeing, which takes talent to accomplish. And even though the film makes you wait for the action to arrive, when it comes, it's very bloody and well executed, with the vampires being an actual threat to be taken seriously. Moving on to spoilers, in the film's conclusion after defeating the vampires, we see a now elderly Sammy as a successful blues singer decades later being unexpectedly visited by Stack and Mary, who survived all those years ago after all the other vampires perished, returning to meet Sammy briefly to offer him a chance at becoming a vampire. only to decline as he's lived long enough. You might find yourself thinking that Stack and Mary are the ultimate winners of the story, as they not only survived but have spent what's possibly decades feeding on innocent people and continuing where Remick left off and creating a community of vampires. But the real winner of the story is Sammy. Stack and Mary might have power and the ability to live forever, but they simultaneously have to live a life dictated by a desire for human blood, not being able to live in daylight, constantly live in secrecy to ensure their own survival, and had to cut themselves off from their actual family, friends, and community. While Sammy, on the other hand, doesn't have immortality, he still nonetheless lived a fulfilling life, accomplishing what he wanted to do and on his own terms, without having to throw a part of himself away to do so. And this conclusion is a core part of understanding and appreciating the film as a whole. When you look at Remick and the other vampires, besides being blood-sucking monsters, they also represent culture vultures, as they can only consume and wear other people's experiences and creations as a skin suit without any of the soul or artistic context intact. The entire reason they're drawn to the juke joint in the first place is because they are drawn to Sammy's individual talent that they want to claim as their own. It highlights the importance of gatekeeping because if you allow anyone into your culture or community with no standards or rules in place whatsoever, it completely loses what makes what you have special and unique, leading to the complete eradication of it as a result. While racism is a threat in the movie, that's not what the vampires represent, as they do offer salvation from racism. What they instead represent is the danger of having an all-encompassing monoculture where everyone is the same. While Remick is just one person, it's implied that he comes from a long line of vampires where even if they're all dead, their memories still reside in him, making him multiple people at once. When someone is turned into a vampire, their mind becomes connected to every other vampire to the point where they have no choice but to conform with what the vampire hive mind wants. By becoming a vampire, you lose your free will to collective memories that aren't even your own that dictates your every move. It's important to have a shared culture in order to get along. For instance, American culture allows people of multiple races, ethnicities, and backgrounds to at the very least live together under a shared understanding of laws and common courtesy. But at the same time, there's no rule saying that you can't belong to other cultures or one that's distinctly your own. At our most basic, we have our personal spaces. We don't allow everyone into our personal space, and that's fine because you can only be familiar and have connections with a certain amount of people. It would be very weird for a stranger on the street to walk up and start being super affectionate towards you the same way he is towards his wife. No boundaries leads to less freedom. No environmental identity or individual culture in favor of a monoculture ultimately means less choices, less expression, and less freedom. And that takeaway message is something people regardless of race or background can appreciate, which is why I think this film stands out as Ryan Coogler's best work, because while it is a love letter to black culture, it at the same time provides something for viewers who are not black to take something away from the film. But those are just my thoughts, and if you have your own, don't be afraid to flex them off in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.